Good afternoon and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story this hour. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that the government was looking at ways to stop a variant of the novel coronavirus found in Brazil from entering Britain. The variant featured 12 mutations, including one also found in the highly infectious variants discovered in England and South Africa. Now, Johnson said the UK already had tough measures in place to protect Britons from infections from abroad. He said that the government was taking steps to extend those to the Brazilian variant. However, he did not clarify as to what those steps may be. Now, Britain reported 1,564 new deaths within 28 days of a positive test for COVID-19 on Wednesday. This was a record daily toll, meaning more have died in the second wave of the pandemic than the first wave last year. Johnson acknowledged how hard this stage of the pandemic was for National Health Service staff. Now, this after COVID-positive inpatients now totaling 32,000, up 70% since the peak in April of 2020. The Prime Minister has urged Britons to adhere to the current lockdown restrictions so as to not overstretch the country's already struggling critical care services. Johnson also responded to criticism about the government's free school meals programs after shared images of food parcels provoked a widespread outcry and forced one supplier to apologize. Football player Marcus Rashford has become a powerful voice in the political discussion over the provision of food to pupils. Rashford used his Premier League status and personal experience of hunger as a child to raise awareness. Now, for more on this, we're being joined by our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark. Good afternoon to you, Mandy. Now, the UK already has tough measures in place to protect Britons from the COVID-19 infections, including this more infectious variant in the country. Now, the government is taking steps to extend those to the Brazilian variant. What are these next steps?
Well, incredibly, it's only this week that travellers into the UK will have to be tested negative before they can come into the UK. Now, that might seem incredible considering the coronavirus is nearly a year old, but there was no measures beforehand for people being tested before they arrive into the UK. So these are some of the measures about people coming in. But there's not a lot of details on specifically, as you pointed out, for the Brazilian variant to stop those from coming in. But finally, they are testing travellers coming into the UK to ensure that they're not bringing it into the country. Boris Johnson is facing enormous pressure to control the coronavirus within the UK because it has spread all over the country. The tiers didn't really help stop the spread. So now in a national lockdown, the only hope is the vaccination rollout.
Right. And Mandy, how is the general population in the UK coping with these stricter lockdown measures that have been implemented?
There's growing apathy towards the lockdown. There's a level of fatigue and there's more willingness to break the rules. There was a poll out that polled people how likely they would be willing to break the rules. They did it the first time round and there was very few people who'd be willing to break the rules. There's a growing feeling that people are willing to stretch the rules or break the rules now because they are simply frustrated with a life in lockdown. So there is a general anger and frustration that a year on, we seem to be still in the same position we were a year ago. Of course, the big step change is that vaccine rollout. And so Boris Johnson has promised a 24/7 vaccine administration. Before, it was more hours till 8 o'clock. But now he argued originally that 80-year-olds did not want to have a midnight jab. But it's clear that in order to have an effective rollout, to hit the numbers they need those clinics open around the clock.
Right. And Johnson has responded to criticism about the government's free school meals programs. Can you take us through the latest details on this?
This has been an ongoing thorn in Boris Johnson's side, and he's repeatedly been shown up by Marcus Rashford, that footballer. Marcus Rashford is a top Premier League footballer, but on top of that, he has a personal story of childhood poverty and hunger. So he could talk about his personal experience, how difficult that was for him and his single mom growing up. Because of that campaign, he's highlighted the 1.3 million children who live in poverty and are reliant on those free school meals for day-to-day living. Now, because of his campaign and during the coronavirus crisis, he ensured that the government did provide those free school meals outside of school time. So they did provide it over the summer. And again, he forced the government to provide it for those children in need over the Christmas period. But the food that has been provided has been well below par. And that is what now Boris Johnson is facing. There is an overwhelming feeling that there is a lack of sympathy and care for those in the greatest need. And why did it take a footballer to push the government into action? And so there is overwhelming anger over the case that the most vulnerable are only being protected by a footballer rather than the government.
Absolutely, using his status there. Now, thanks very much for that, Mandy. Thank you for bringing us all the latest out of the UK.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.